Welcome, everyone. Let's get started. Shavua Tov, a good week. And in these times in particular, when I offer that wish, Shavua Tov, in these times when it feels like there's more news which isn't good than news which is good, I try to think about the intention of that blessing, not so much being about good in the things we can't control, but that it be a week of goodness in that which we can control. Wherever we have agency and power, may we use it for good. And this week begins at the conclusion of Highest Refugee Shabbat, an annual opportunity for us to zero in on one of the central pillars of our tradition, which is welcoming and helping both in the state of Israel, our homeland, and here in this country, where we play each as citizens a role in trying to make a better and more just society, in that central pillar of welcoming the stranger, of knowing our own history and the places we were not welcomed and the places that we were welcomed, going all the way back, as the Torah tells us over and over, love the stranger because you were strangers in the land of Egypt, and carrying that historical memory and that consciousness through Jewish history, through our experiences in the Holocaust, and until today, striving always to create expansive societies, expansive, welcoming cultures and communities, recognizing that there are few things in this world more difficult than being a refugee, being detached from one's home and homeland and often family, needing to make a new life in a foreign and strange place, and stretching our own compassions to do whatever we can to create communities of welcome. And it's overwhelming to think about the waves of refugees in this time. And when we envisioned this, we were thinking about Afghan refugees, and that is our focus tonight. But of course, we also have in our hearts and in our minds the waves of Ukrainian refugees spreading around Europe, and knowing that the time will come as they're traveling to Israel in the case of Jewish refugees, and that these shores, as needed, we pray, will open up our doors as well. It's a time to focus our hearts and our minds, not just to this value in the abstract, but in the concrete, to think about what we can and what we are doing as a community. And we partner that with a value I often think about and call Kedushat HaSipur, the sacredness of the personal narrative, that we come to understand big ideas through the lens of an individual and their story and their humanity. And so we bring all that together with a wonderful program tonight, a conversation between Marti Michael and Reshad Ahmadi. Marti is a friend to the Bayit and a role model and really a community light. She's the former executive director of the Riverdale Y and has devoted her, I put retirement in quotes,
yes,
to being a volunteer and an advocate on behalf of refugees in the United States. And she's really energized and helped gather the efforts that's happening in Riverdale now to resettle an Afghan refugee family. And her role is central at the Westchester Jewish Coalition for Immigration that has been our partner and our guide. She's just an amazing person. We're excited to learn from her tonight. She's going to be in conversation with Reshad Ahmadi. We're so delighted to welcome. We wish we were welcoming you in person into the walls of our synagogue, the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale, the Bayit, which we call a Bayit because we want it to be a home for all. So welcome virtually to our home. Reshad was granted a special immigrant visa as he worked for a US military contractor in Afghanistan. And we'll hear his story about who from his family was able to leave and who wasn't. And in many ways, it's emblematic of the current reality of the many, many tens of thousands who should be able to leave and find refuge from Afghanistan and the struggle that they are experiencing. And we want to open our hearts to them through really hearing Reshad's story of resettlement and of reaching out to bring his family with him. So we're so delighted to welcome you both. And the flow of our program tonight is to have Marti and Reshad engage in conversation for a while. Marti will also share with us about the efforts that are taking place in Riverdale that our Bayit is already a part of and will continue to be a part of. And then we'll have time for question and answer. Please listen really with open hearts and also with an eye towards the role you might like to play in our efforts in this project going forward. And I'm just delighted looking around and seeing the many community members and activists who are here with us. So welcome. And Marti, we're going to turn it over to you and Reshad together. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Rabbi, and thank you for those perfect words of introduction. I do want to start by acknowledging and thanking deeply the Bayit for all of the work that you already have done and for us. I will talk about that later when I talk about the coalition. I want to single out the rabbis, and although he doesn't want the accolades, also Michael Goldblum, who's been instrumental in all that the congregation has done so far. And we want to be sure that everyone understands that there's plenty of work to do still. And the idea that a coalition of Riverdale synagogues and some churches and the Ethical Society, we'll talk about that a little later, have come together as a community is a really beautiful statement about Riverdale. And HIR is helping take a lead in that. I'll explain later. So thank you for that. Reshad and I have spoken in the past. He's an extraordinary man, and what I will do is what I called a little bit of a Dick Cavett kind of a conversation, and asking him some questions, and he will tell us his story that way. So Reshad, I think to start, I think what people would like to understand and kind of feel how you felt before you became a refugee, what you were doing in Afghanistan, what your work was, and particularly what you were doing in the countryside, and then what happened there and moved you into Kabul. So tell us from the beginning what life was like before everything changed.
Good evening, everyone. Pleasure to be to have the opportunity to talk with everyone tonight. I'm so glad that I have the opportunity. Excuse me. My name is Reshad. I was born and raised in Afghanistan, and back in 2010 and 11, when I started college as a young enthusiast engineer, I started college of studying civil engineering in a Russian-built university called Polytechnic Kabul University. So we started studying there, and there was a new era of hope and rebuilding and vision for every young man in Afghanistan that we are going to have after 30 years of devastating civil war. We will be able to be part of rebuilding a new country for us, a new future for our kids. So a bit like that envision, I started at my school. I graduated back in 2005, 2012 and 11. I started working as a quality control manager, a quality control engineer for the US Army funded project. And then throughout my career, I started traveling all around Afghanistan. As Marti, you mentioned, I was tasked to go to the countryside, to the suburban areas, to the remote areas of Afghanistan that the US was funding these projects to build the facilities for the US, for the Afghan forces. I was interacting with locals, with countrymen, and I was traveling in between Kabul and provinces. Throughout my years of work there and reporting from the remote areas and bringing up the insufficient work and problems within the projects, I got to be noticed by the insurgents which were hiding in the suburban countryside. So this was the starting point that I started facing some threats. First, it was kind of text messages I was receiving from unknown people that on that time, the insurgents, the Taliban, which we know them right now, the terrorist group that they are controlling Afghanistan, unfortunately right now, were deeming the US troops, the US Army there as invaders and infidels. And we as helping them to invade our own country, which was the opposite, because we were happy, we were so glad that we were be part of rebuilding our country. So by ideology, we were on the opposite side of the battle. So we were their first enemy. So that was the reason that I started receiving these threats, and slowly these threats became serious against my life, and I started receiving phone calls. And in the meantime, after a year of ignoring, because it was a normal life for everyone, because you never know when we are commuting to the city or your work, somebody was blowing himself in between the people, or in the school or university or in a mosque. So they were not religion locations that were safe, nor the entertainment or infrastructures of Afghanistan. So it was kind of normal thing. So I was starting to ignore them, but the threats, the level of threats became so serious that one day they reached out my wife during her commute to her job, that if you want to see alive your cat again, stop your husband working for the invaders and infidels. This is a serious warning, and you have to take it serious, because you guys are helping invaders to stay in our country and invade us. So when she came home with that situation, with the kind of condition that the feeling that she had was so scary. My kid was with her, because in Afghanistan, normally women are allowed to, even if women are allowed to work in the government offices, there is a daycare inside the office. So she was taking my kids as well with her. So they were alone. When they got home, she was so scared, and it was really a heartbreaking moment for us, because we have no choice why we are facing this. And after that incident, I honestly didn't want to stop working where I was working, because it was a good life that I had. I had a good income. I had a house. My mom and dad was living with me. I had a good income. My kids were going in a good school. Everything was so set up that I was not even ready to leave my job. So I again told my wife that let's ignore it, because this might be a regular thing for everyone, because I know my friends are working with me. They are also receiving these threats.
You just froze for a moment, Reshad.
I also shared shared with my organization's security manager, and he also advised some strategy to change your commute, change your car, stuff like that. So we were abiding by those regulations, and we moved on with our life like that. At the end of 2016, I was driving home one night. It was 7:35. I can't forget that moment. That it was late, and then I was driving home. Suddenly, my car was caught. My way was caught with an SUV, and within a couple of seconds, I found myself in between four armed men. They put masks and then glasses, and I find myself being a target of 4 AK-47, which I can't forget the name of that weapon. And these men, which I don't know them, which I don't know their language, even they're talking with the southern, the Pashto language, which is the other language of Afghanistan. And then they start cursing me that you never heard us, you never followed, you never understand the warnings that we gave you. Now you put yourself in this situation. We told you to stop working for the US, for the invaders. So they don't call them US, they always call them invaders and infidels like that. And I tried to be a little bit, for my understanding, to be smart, and then put the car in the back to go back, but in a second, they broke the windshields and dragged me out of the car. So that was the moment that I found myself being beaten by four armed men. They were yelling, they're cursing me. And then it was kind of the moment that I was just feeling like, no, nothing is right now important for me than the life of my kids. I was just thinking about my kids, my son and daughter, that if they kill me today, what's going to happen to them? Because I'm everything for them. I am everyone for them, because we have limited family members right now, because war in Afghanistan destroyed everything. So I start begging them. Honestly, I start crying and begging them that please don't kill me. I have kids. Whatever you want, you can take everything from me. So it was a miracle moment that they spared my life. But I can't forget that moment, that what happened. I just prayed to God that I haven't done anything wrong. I haven't done anything wrong that I should be killed for. And if not for me, please God, save me for my kids, for my family. So that miracle happened. They spared my life. And after 3 minutes, I was shocked. I couldn't speak anymore. And I figured out that I am left alone in a corner of the street, beaten, my face, my clothes were torn out. They took my car, my laptop, every belonging that I had. They searched me. They took out even my jacket. They torn apart my clothes. So they was like in a muddy corner of the road, and everybody was watching. Like it was in the middle of Main Street. Everybody was watching. And nobody was able to come forward to save me on that moment. So I run to house like that in that situation. And then when my wife opened the door, my mom, they start screaming and crying on that moment. And it was the moment that my dad and mom and my wife told me that if no matter how much you earn, how much you make on a monthly basis, if we are living in a good situation, if you are having a good life, we don't care about. We all care is your life. So stop doing anything you do. Just go out of this country, find a safe haven for yourself, because we want you to live, because your kids are so scared. And on that, it was the moment that I made my mind to start applying for this visa that you mentioned, called the SIV, which is the Special Immigration Visa, which was available from 2009. And we are talking about 2016. So I'm trying to connect these dots, because I was not interested even to apply for this visa before that time. Even I was eligible working with the US Army up to 2016, but I didn't apply because I had a good life there. Everything was set up. But this moment of my life made me to stop thinking about anything and just to save my life for the future of my kids. So I applied for the SIV, and after a long wait and couple of bureaucracy through the immigration system, I was able to get the immigration visa back in 2017, early June. I was granted that visa, and then I just, the day I got the visa and I started to just give away my household items. My wife started to resign from her job. And then we were just trying to pack the whole life in one suitcase. And we were just thinking what we should put in that suitcase, because I am right now on that moment, I was 33 years old, 32 years old. I had a life. I had the whole life back in Afghanistan. The memories, everything, my siblings, my brothers, my parents. But we were able to only carry a suitcase of 50 by 50 inches. So what we should put in this suitcase. We were thinking about to unpack or reduce our packages. Then suddenly I got a call from a friend in the US that, have you seen the news? I said, I know. He said that you got 72 hours to just get out of Afghanistan to get into the US. If this executive order of the president, if it goes to implementation, you will face challenges on the borders. So we got, because I already booked tickets, I changed everything, and then we got only 4 hours to just pack everything and run to the airport. This was the moment that we packed everything. Everyone from my extended families were in our house. Everybody was running up and down to just put together things for us. So we went to the airport, and then by June 30th, we were able to come to the US. And I landed in Boston, Massachusetts. I stayed for a couple of days with a family, extended family, which is, we call them uncle. And then from there, I started to think about the new step of life. Now I'm safe, I'm in the US, what's gonna happen? I'm starting from scratch. I don't know anyone here. I have zero experience of working in the US. I have no education in the US. So what's gonna happen? I have a degree in engineering, which is from a Russian university. But what's gonna happen? Up to that moment, I have never thought about how to start a new life in the US, because I've never thought of that. But now we are facing a challenge of coming from an Eastern world to the Western world with a total different culture, everything, and we have to start from scratch. I was searching online and I was thinking about to get resettled in Virginia, Northern Virginia, because a large community of Afghans are living there from a long time ago. So I was searching online, and then I, through these Facebook pages that SIVs are part of that, I found an advertise from Hayes, and a lady which happened to be an Afghan working for Hayes, which is still she's working there. She posted that text that if there's a family who is already in the US, have the visa, we have an opportunity to resettle them in Westchester of New York State. I saw that post and I was like, wait a second, New York? And no, in my whole dream, in my whole life, I've never thought to be living in the New York State, because whenever you're talking outside the US or maybe in Afghanistan only, I can talk. When you say New York, it's always Times Square with the big screens with the high skyscrapers. So I was like, no, this is not gonna happen, because I won't be able to be living in New York City or New York State on that time. So I told my wife that I'm gonna reach out to this lady and let's find out what is the opportunity, how we're gonna be able to resettle in New York State. So that was the moment that I contacted her, and then she asked her to visit her in New York City office of Hayes. We went there, and then she introduced us with the community sponsorship model. That on that time it was all like a conversation that I still don't know what was she explaining to me, but only thing I remember, she told me that there is a host organization which we are connecting cases to the host organization, and they're supporting you to get resettled in this area which is called Westchester, and in Westchester there's White Plains. I asked her only one thing: can you give me an address that I should go to that city and see where it is located? She said that, yeah, you can find it in the Google. It's White Plains, just go there. So I was driving a friend, that family member, we were staying with him, and he was kind. And then we searched White Plains, and then we ended up being in the city center of White Plains. There was a small city. And I called my wife and told her that this is it. I mean, she's saying that there is an apartment ready for you. People are ready to help you, and you just have to accept this, and that's it. And she said, yeah, you know better, let's go for it. So we accepted, and then we were introduced to the group called Jewish Community Center of Harrison, the JCCH, which was the host organization for our family. And through the highest, we were introduced, and we met these kind and generous people of JCCH, that they were able to receive us as a family members with their open hearts, their kindness was able to help us to get resettled in White Plains. I started living there. They helped my kids to enroll in school. My wife was able to start practicing even driving because it was something not going to happen in Afghanistan. So they were able to help me find a job in my own field. And I started living there from August 2017. And I was the very first Afghan, to be resettling in Westchester after it was kind of challenge that I accepted, because I wanted to start from zero, from scratch, but I have to build something for myself. And that was the moment that because of this huge support of community that I received, the generosity of the Jewish community that I received from Harrison, and to be able to start my life, to stand on my own feet, was enormous. And that was the moment that I committed with myself and my wife as well, that this is something that we have never expected before coming here. And also because in Afghanistan, as you may know, there was only one Jew living up to now, but the Jewish religion was unknown too much to the Afghan people, because we are living far away to the east. And whatever we learned from Jewish community was only in the TVs. The way that we have been received in this community was totally different, and we are forever grateful of this community. And that was the moment that I made a promise for myself that no matter what happens in the future, if I am able to help anyone or not, maybe I will not be able to help monetary to someone else, but I will volunteer. I will use my time to be an advocate for this system, for this community sponsorship model. And that was the moment that I volunteered for Hudson Homes for Refugees, and then I got involved with WGCI, and I get to know everyone in the community. And right now I'm an ambassador for Hudson Homes for Refugees, and I am going to different synagogues, different mosques, different churches around Westchester, and just trying to, the least that I can do is sharing my own story of how I started living here, how I was able to stand on my own feet, how to become a self-sufficient immigrant, a proud self-sufficient immigrant in the US, and build towards that American dream that everybody is talking about. But the pillar of building that dream was this model of community sponsorship that I have been able to resettle in Westchester.
Marti, you have
I didn't have to ask you one question, Reshad. You answered all my questions. Thank you. The only thing I would add to everything you said that I happen to know about you is that you're now a successful engineer. You own a home in Westchester, a house. Your children are making fun of your pronunciation of English words sometimes. That's how American they have become. And we're delighted, obviously, to have you here, and for all that you understand your value is in so many places, and one of those places is as a volunteer to help others through the process that you've been through, and make the communities understand what it meant to you and what it means to other refugees and immigrants. So bless you for all of that, what you went through, what you succeeded in for your children, and now what you're giving back to the community. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank
you.
you. You don't know the word I'm about to say. You make me verklempt whenever you talk about this. I start to cry. I'm happy you survived that night. All right, I'm gonna switch gears a little bit. And Reshad, if you do have to leave, please, I know that you may have
I
to.
will stick around for 5
Okay.
5 minutes. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So let me talk a little bit now about what we're doing in Riverdale, which is really exactly what Reshad was talking about. We put together, I'm a vice president of WJCI, the Westchester Jewish Coalition for Immigration. I talked them into believing that Riverdale is part of Westchester, since Riverdale is where I consider my network and my home, although I don't live in Riverdale. I worked here for 30 years. And so we adopted Riverdale into Westchester, and I started to ask the community to form exactly what Reshad is talking about. We now call them host groups, to resettle a refugee family, and was astounded to find how quickly the community came together within a week, really. We had volunteers from most of the synagogues, from a church, from the Ethical Society, as I said, and from Manhattan College, including a fraternity, and I will talk about them a little later. The fraternity has been raising significant money for our endeavor. So we now have 40 volunteers, many of them from the Bayit, and from the other synagogues. Because we are a group of volunteers and we don't have tax exempt status, one of the first things we had to do was find an institution that is what's called a 501c3 that would become our fiscal sponsor, so that we could accept donations, because this is an expensive proposition for each family that is resettled. It depends on the family, it depends on the situations, but it can cost as much as $30,000 to $40,000 per family, and I'll explain where that goes. But HIR stepped right up. Thank you again, Michael Goldblum. Stepped right up. The rabbis said, absolutely, we will do this. And Richard and Shuli in the office set everything up. 1, 2, 3. We went through a contract quickly. And I would say it took a little more than a week for us to be ready to accept donations. We're very grateful for that process going quickly, because the sooner we're ready, the sooner we can accept the family. While that was happening, and a fundraising committee was formed, and has raised significant funds already, I became the chair of the coalition in what we call the Northwest Bronx Coalition for Refugees. And it has a number of committees, and I want to explain a little what it entails, because many of you can get involved in many different ways. The committees start with housing, that is finding an apartment. And what we're doing now is searching some neighborhoods that would be welcoming, not only emotionally and as humans, but have what is needed by perhaps an observant Muslim family, that there is a mosque nearby, there's a place to buy halal food if they need, there are other Afghans and Muslims around so that they feel a part of a community. So research is happening now in the closest areas to Riverdale, because Riverdale is quite expensive. the cost of the apartment is relevant. And there's a housing setup committee, which will come next. Once we know what the family consists of, we then will start looking for donations of furniture and other things needed to set up a household. There are also committees doing research at the moment on, there's an education committee, there's a health and medical committee, there's a community connections committee that is going to help the family understand where they are, where transportation is, where the laundromat is, where the supermarket is. They need to be sort of oriented to their community quickly. We have an interpreters committee because we don't know yet what language we will need to speak. Reshad is wonderful in English, but we may get a family where nobody speaks English, and we will have to look for not only translators to get them feeling at home, but also for the father, usually it's the father first, to be able to work, and for the children to go to school first, a school that works with children who don't speak English. And there is there are such schools in, which I did not know, in the New York City school system. So it is what becomes an all-encompassing sort of big hug, is the way I look at it. We will pick them up at the airport. We will bring them to their apartment, which will be fully furnished and stocked with food. Usually we try to have a hot meal ready for them. Hopefully we will, and I know a few already, Afghan chefs who will make them a dinner that a food that they are familiar with. We're not going to serve them hamburgers and French fries on their first night. And start the process of integrating them into their new American community. Takes a lot of people, and it takes a lot of money. We are committed, then this all happens through HIAS. The family is assigned to us through HIAS, and there is a case manager from HIAS. And I see someone's asking, what's the timeline? We, the host group, are committed to the family for a year. It may be shorter, and it would be good if it was shorter, because that will mean the family has succeeded in getting a job, getting the kids in school, being able to become self-sustaining so that they can pay their own rent. But at the beginning, we sign the lease, we co-sign the lease because no one in the family is employed. So they need a co-signer, and we pay the rent, we pay the utilities. We transport them to doctors. We get the case managers from HIAS, will get them. Refugees come in with some pretty good benefits. It's one of the best ways to come into this country is as classified as a refugee. They come in with SNAP benefits, which are what we used to call food stamps. They come in with Medicaid. They come in with a work permit so they can get a job. And they come in with some federal financial benefits at the beginning. They get a lump sum per person in the family. And then after that, they do get some stipend, but doesn't anywhere near cover the costs of living in America. So that's what we have formed now, and our committees are working, and we're waiting. All of the refugees who came from Afghanistan through the horrible few days we saw at the airport in Kabul, we watched on the news. Anybody who was in the United States was housed on military bases, and those bases are all now emptied. All of those refugees have been resettled. And what is happening soon, I hear, we will see. There are what's called lily pads, which are American military, either bases or property that are housing refugees who they got out of Afghanistan, but were not flown to the United States. So I know there are lily pads in Qatar and in the United Arab Emirates. Reshad, you may know of others. I think there's one in Germany. I'm really not sure. But I think there are about 20,000 more refugees on the lily pads. And the lily pads are the next groups that will be coming to the United States. And Reshad told me, I did not know this, that there are many SIV holders who are still in Afghanistan. They were told to wait at home. And then all hell broke loose and they're hiding now. The plan had been to stay home. If you're, we will come get you and we will transport you to the US. Nobody expected the Taliban to take over Kabul in a couple of days and close the airport. So those people are also working their way on getting out of the country, and there's no way to know what the timing of that will be. Reshad, before you leave, I know the last time we spoke, your parents were stuck somewhere. Where are they now?
Yeah,
you don't tell me where. How are they now?
They're fine for now. They have been stuck in a refugee camp for the past 6 months. They are with 12,000 people in a camp in UAE. I can share right now, but the hope is that they will be able to move on and come here, join us.
Yes. Okay, I think I've explained what our process is, and I've explained what the Riverdale community is doing, which is spectacular, although mostly what we're doing is raising money and preparing all the other pieces for eventually HIAS assigning us a family. And I'm available for questions. Reshad will say good night, yes?
I have to sign off. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here tonight with you. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you for everything, Reshad.
Good night.
Yeah.
So James shall I just answer some questions that are in the chat? James is asking, what is the biggest need after money? And I would say, it's actually hard to answer that question. At the moment, the biggest need is finding an apartment. Although we can't find an apartment until we know if we may get a single person. We may get a couple with no children, or there have been families with 5 children. I know of one group that came, I don't know how many adults, but there were 12 children. So we don't know what apartment we need yet, but one thing that has happened that I thought was very lovely, there is a developer and landlord in Yonkers who is building a building in downtown Yonkers by the river. It's a 27-story building. It's not completed, but some of the apartments are habitable. And he's an older man, and he said he lived a very good life in America. He's very thankful for his life, and he would like to house some refugees at reduced rent and no security deposit, and nobody had to co-sign the lease. So we did place our first family with him in Yonkers. They're thrilled. The apartment's beautiful, and he's giving us a wonderful break. So that's a need. If anybody knows a landlord in Riverdale, or the environment close to Riverdale, needs to be close enough that many of our 40 volunteers can go probably daily at the beginning to make sure that everything is okay, and take people to the doctor or the dentist or the school, or whatever bureaucracy needs to be contacted. That kind of thing will be the bureaucracy piece that coming out of the federal government and the state and the city will be handled by HIAS and the case manager. So we'll have a lot of help with expertise there. But first an apartment, and really we need to know that we have enough funds to support this family. I hope not for a year, but if it happens, then for a year. So funds at the moment are the most important thing. Let me see if I can find some other questions, or if somebody wants to, well, put them in the chat. I think that's the easiest way. Yes, in the chat, Rabbi Exler has put a link you can make a donation online through the Bayit, and it goes directly to our Afghan resettlement fund here that's held at HIR. If you'd like to work in some way on any of the pieces I talked about, contact the Social Action Committee or the Shul office, and they'll get in touch with me. I'm zooming past questions, I think, sorry. Okay, that same question. How do you apply to serve on a committee? Who do you contact? So contact the Social Action Committee of HIR. They will contact me, although I have to say, we don't need that many more volunteers. It will depend on what you want to do. So we will talk. There are some committees that have 15 volunteers and really only need 5. So I'm not sure that we're going to have that much need for more volunteers. However, I do want to say this. I forgot to say this. I don't want to forget about Ukraine. 2 things are happening that I think will affect what goes on now. Once we get our first family from HIAS, if we have the bandwidth for it, we will apply for a second family. So we will again need to reconstitute the committees and raise more money because there are more Afghans coming. And sadly, I fear there will be Ukrainians coming. I don't know if they'll be coming quickly. And I don't know how many will be coming to the United States. I don't think anybody does. Right now, as you all know, the fathers are being required to stay in Ukraine and fight. So with the mothers and children in bordering countries, I don't know that they're going to want to go as far away as the United States if there's any chance that they can reconnect with their dad. So we'll see what happens. But we are committed to helping them as well if they need to be resettled in the United States. Other questions? Did I miss something in the chat?
Joining you, Marty, to thank you for your incredible expertise and wisdom. And folks may remember we were together in HIR only a few years ago for your work on the southern border. And it's both staggering to realize that we're living in a time where there are so many refugee crises, and in some tiny, tiny way, empowering to know that we have incredible partners and role models who jump at the opportunity to be with those who are needy and vulnerable and help us work together to support them. So thank you for being here. Thank you for guiding us, and may we be strengthened in doing the work that we need to do. While we have this group here, I'll just mention to encourage folks to stay tuned to their emails. We're planning to gather again at the Russian diplomatic compound tomorrow at 4 p.m. really to send the message that as long as Putin is in Ukraine, we are not letting up, and that we will continue to stand with each other. So
excellent.
Do join us. And as is our custom, we're going to make our way to breakout rooms to follow up, chat, just wish each other a good night, give each other strength. And my thanks again to the Social Action Committee, who's been incredible in this work, and really an igniter of so much of what we try to do together. And thank Rabbi Ezra, Rabbi Bracha, Rabbi Sarah, and Rabbi Avi for making all this possible. And Yael, of course, the engine behind all of our programming efforts.
Yes.
So thank you to all, and
thank you.
Shabbat Tov, a week of goodness.
Thank you, Rabbi.